Have you ever had a day where you felt like you just needed a little extra courage to get through whatever you had to do?
Who doesn't feel that way? Where sometimes it's a little and sometimes it's a lot. And it reminds me that Ray Mann, now what a name, Ray Mann, an artist, right? An artist who at the core, he said himself was a painter. He said lipstick is the red badge of courage. And I think about that from red lipstick, about courage. Just like you said, sometimes it's just the swipe of the lipstick and sometimes it's even more.
I love that. I love that. And I hope you love that too. So we want to welcome you today to this episode of Lipstick Leadership. And I'm Meridith Alexander here, where we're going to be talking a little bit more about how we find our courage and what courage even means. And I'm here, as always, with my amazing co-host.
Hello, Meredith. Hello, listeners. I'm Debbie Lundberg, performance coach with Presenting Powerfully and Lipstick Leadership. As you know, we are empowering women and men to greatness through communication, resilience, and grit. We could probably work courage in there somewhere, but we won't change our tagline.
Exactly. Exactly. So I don't know, what do you feel is really courage, Debbie?
Well, I think sometimes, depending on what we've seen or heard as a child, we might think of courage as something really spectacular. And in reality, as you do in grit mindset grit mindset, and in your coaching, as well as I do, we know that people are sometimes looking for courage to be that extra oomph. And I define it often as, what does it take to really get you out of that familiar place? Some people call it a comfort zone, and others might not see it as courage or courageous, and certainly they might not see it as bravery. That's a different word. But courage is when you are willing and able to be vulnerable enough to push beyond what is familiar or comfortable. What do you think?
Yes, I have to totally agree with that. That courage, I find, is very personal, right? And there are different levels of courage, and courage can be very relative to each of us. And it's interesting sometimes when I'm working with clients, often it takes courage, meaning, to your point, stepping out of what's familiar, simply to change a thought pattern, right? Or to change the way you're defining yourself. If you have defined yourself as apologetically introvert, for example, for most of your life, because someone at some point said, oh, you're an introvert, you have all the characteristics. And oh, by the way, have you ever complimented someone by saying you're an introvert? Not usually. So if someone like you or me, when we're coaching them, saying, wait a minute, courage sometimes is owning your greatness, owning who you are. And what if, instead of defining yourself as apologetically introverted, you're saying, hey, I'm the person who, when I walk into the room, I don't have to be the center of attention. I'm very observant. I really, really pay attention to detail and to what's going on. And when I say something, it may not be often, but you're going to want to listen, right? That becomes very powerful. So courage, to your point, means simply sometimes being bold enough to do the unfamiliar, even if that's an unfamiliar thought, right?
Yes, there's a real synergy there in what you said about being bold enough to own that thought. And if I'm putting words there, I picked up on that, bold enough. And another aspect of courage that is a way for us to think about it is, what would you typically do when you're faced with whatever situation? So you work with people on that grit mindset. I work with them on their performance. And so you may do this too. I say, what would you do if I weren't asking you this question? And then the person would tell me, well, I would handle it this way. And then I'll say, what would you do if you knew someone were in your corner encouraging you and backing you up. Now, then they tell me something different typically. And I say, that's courage, because I won't be there with you, nor do I want you dependent on me. But imagine if you knew you had that strength, even if no one else believed it or saw it. And yet you'll know I am, but not physically there, not able to be there, just emotionally, to say somebody else can see it in you. I also know that there's a courage in knowing your limits. And I don't mean that in a pessimistic way at all. I believe it's very courageous to say to someone, you are so good at this. And while I am pretty good at it and I do well, you're even more effective. So please take the spotlight. So you utilize the example of the introvert. If there can be that extrovert who he or she sometimes wants to have the stage a lot, and he or she could step back, not because they feel like they should, but because someone else really does have something that is spectacular. That's courageous for someone to get out of the spotlight sometimes. So I like that we share both sides of it.
Yes, and that really goes back to what we are emphasizing. If you're listening to this, you get to define what's courageous for you, right? And it begins with simply sometimes asking some different questions. So if you're feeling that crunch and you're feeling a little bit like you're slipping into that fight or flight mode, right? It sometimes, to your point, Debbie, even if you can't have someone there, that one thought that feels a little bit better sometimes is to think of one other person, one other story. And even if it's the story of, Oprah Winfrey or Nelson Mandela, whoever, who has overcome huge obstacles, and know that there are people out there who at one point felt the same kind of crunch that you're feeling and went on to be in a completely different place. And if they can do it, you can do it too, right? So it's find a thought that makes you feel just a little bit better. And that's your quest when you're going for courage, is to find the thoughts that feel a little bit better and inch your way up to where you can powerfully put on that red lipstick, right?
Put it on, whatever that red lipstick is physically, or whatever that represents to you, that is that bold statement of really being your badge of courage. Yes, nicely captured.
Wonderful. So let's pull it all together for you where you're listening. So today it is about courage, because that's kind of a theme of where we are right now in the world, is sometimes needing to feel comfortable with the unpredictable, with constant change, with the unfamiliar. And Debbie and I spend tons of time working with high level clients who are still wrestling with finding their own courage. And you can do it too when you're listening. So often that feeling of fear, which would be triggering the need for courage, what if you were to identify it, to Debbie's point, as the unfamiliar? What if that fear could then be turned and become your superpower, even if it's only the thoughts that feel unfamiliar, thinking of yourself as courageous, thinking of yourself as powerful or great, right? And also, if it helps you, think of all the people who would be cheering you on, right? And actually, in Think and Grow Rich, he talks about imaginary. Even you can even imagine some of your heroes cheering you on, right? But know that you're cheered on, and sometimes know that being courageous is to be honest about your limits, right? And to really find that one little thought that feels a little bit better until you have that moment where I'm doing this, I'm owning my courage, I'm owning my greatness, and I'm powering beyond any limits here. So how did I do? Did I miss anything, Debbie? All right. So, well, we so appreciate you being here today on this episode. Remember, our goal here is to give you a little bit of gold in your day, just a few little tips that you can use to move forward, to show up as an even better version of yourself, to have an awesome day out there. And so I'm Meredith Alexander, CEO of Grit Mindset Academy, and we've just had a blast. And I'm going to turn over the final farewell to my beautiful co-host here.
Thank you, Meredith. I'll happily take it. And I'm Debbie Lundberg, as a performance coach at Presenting Powerfully and author of Remote Work Rockstar. So if you liked what you heard, if you heard us have the courage to share some vulnerability and you want more on some similar topics, they won't all be about courage, but they're these quick conversations where we pick a topic and relate how we coach because we want to include people. Remember that we're looking for you to gain from this something that you might not get otherwise, a little peek into having a coach on your side. So if you did like it, please, if we earned it, give us 5 stars, like us, share Lipstick Leadership with others who could benefit from it, because we are thrilled, excited, and grateful that you're here.
And why are we here? We are here to empower you to really achieve your greatness through communication, resilience, and of course, that grit, right? So if you have a quote that you think is awesome, we would also encourage you to leave it in the comments below, because we absolutely love reading comments and love getting ideas about great quotes that have been inspiring you. So until next time, put a little bit of lipstick into your leadership. And Debbie and I will see you soon.
Thank you.